We're having trouble with your live. Oh God. Okay. How do I know if we're live? It says we're having trouble. But is it live? Is it?
I don't know.
Active now. I think we're okay, everybody. I just want to make sure we're live. I think we're live on Instagram. I hope we're live anyway. Let me just try that exit and thing. I don't know if we're live on Instagram. Can anybody? I don't think we're live on Instagram. Just a little technical issue here, but we should be good to go in a second. Just hang in there, Facebook, and is anybody finding out if we're live?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay, I'll bring Nathan there.
Nathan is live.
Okay, well, I don't know. That's a good point. Watch live now, I think. It might be because of the internet connection.
No, I'm not on internet.
Go on the Wi-Fi.
I'm not on internet. I'm on data.
No, go on the Wi-Fi. We've got a stronger signal. Okay, just bear with me 1 second, please. This is Dr. Joe in the house. We just got trying to figure out some little issue here with Instagram, and hopefully we can go live shortly. And I don't know. So okay, no internet connection. We're just trying to connect with the internet here. Anyway, while we're trying to resolve that technical issue, I'm going to hopefully. That's not. Okay, after all that. Anyway, we'll start on what's it called? YouTube and Facebook, and then hopefully we can join on Instagram shortly. Okay, this is Dr. Joe. Hope everyone's doing well, and so apologies if you're on Instagram, you may have to go to Facebook and is it live now?
So tight.
Okay, let's try that one. Press that one. Connection. Oh, we're live. Hey, all right, we're live now on Instagram. Oh, sorry about that. It's all good. So we're live on Instagram and we're live on Facebook. So this is Dr. Joe in the house. Hope everyone's doing well today. And today, just give me a shout out where you dial in from, and just give you a personal little hello. We've got. Tell me where you also dial in from. Just give you a little shout out which part of the country you're in. So it looks like we've got people from all over the place. Let's have a look. Dimitri, we have Chicago's in the house, and we have Honey Loker. Hello, everybody. Atlanta's in the house, Arizona's in the house, and Austin's in the house, and so on. Oh, Germany. We've got Danielle Holler from Germany, a new investor. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you, Brandon. And so Madagascar. Oh my goodness. We got Madagascar in the house, and Knoxville, Tennessee, and California, and everybody. Okay, I feel a lot better now. I apologize again for those people who tuned in. I was just having some technical issue trying to get Instagram on the house, but it looks like we're all in business now. Okay, today we've got a fantastic session. And I know that I've been having a lot of questions from people regarding what do I do and the strategy that I have for my Section 8, properties. As you know, I'm a buy and hold investor. I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area, and most of my homes I keep for the long haul. I have quite a decent portfolio here, and Washington, D.C. is one of the most expensive real estate markets in the country. And as a result of that, it's real hard as a buy and hold investor to get cash flow because, I mean, prices around here are $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 just for a regular no frills row house. And you know, and obviously with those kind of acquisition prices, that's even before the renovations. Once you add in the renovation cost, it can get kind of pricey, and therefore it's really hard to cash flow. So you know, I was able to figure a way whereby you know, I've been able to sort of get cash flow. And the good thing about areas like Washington, D.C. and some of the major cities is that, you know, time has proven that you can get cash appreciation in those markets. So over time, a lot of the properties I bought have appreciated in value. So you got the appreciation potential in places like Washington, D.C., the big cities like Boston, New York, L.A., you know, San Francisco, and so on. But the problem is that since you're paying so much, it's hard to get cash flow. And therefore, a lot of investors always there's always that debate. Do I go for cash flow or do I go for appreciation? You know, if you want cash flow, then you go to kind of mid-price markets, maybe where you can get houses for $100,000, $120,000, $150,000, but you may not get long-term appreciation. You may not, but you know, typically you may not. Whereas in areas like where we are, you can get appreciation, but you at the expense of cash flow. So I want both. My thing is, I don't want just one or the other. I want it all. I want it both. And so the question becomes, how am I able to get that? And therefore truly leverage on the power of real estate, which, as we know, are cash flow, appreciation, leverage, tax benefits, and equity buildup, and so on. So as a result of that, I've kind of, over the years, worked on a system whereby I leverage Section 8. And I know there's a lot of stereotypes about Section 8. Does it work? Does it not work? Are they going to trash my house? Are they going to destroy it? You know, all the stereotypes that are associated with Section 8. I'm somewhat familiar with it. And I've realized that for the most part, it is possible to get you know, voucher holders who are no different than you and I. In fact, a lot of them are no different than you and I. All they want is a decent house in a decent neighborhood and rent from a decent landlord. They are tired of living in crappy neighborhoods, in crappy houses, and renting from crappy landlords. Okay, and I call these sort of tier one tenants. And you know, when you get down to it, they're no different than you and I. They don't want to be shot at no more than you want to be shot at. And they want their kids to go to decent schools. They want to have access to amenities like shopping, transportation, recreation, and things like that. All the kind of things that you and I will want. The only difference is that they don't have any money. And as a result of that, you know, they're kind of stuck in these high crime areas, and you know, where there are limited amenities and so forth. So therein, if you want to learn more about my systems, I did a podcast with Brandon Turner and David Green several months ago. I think it's 361 or 365 on the Bigger Pockets. So you want to check that out. We had a really good interview, and also written quite a few articles in the Bigger Pockets, you know, forums where you can read that. Anyway, so what I wanted to do today was to go through a case study of one of my deals. In fact, this is a recent deal where the tenant moved in there into the house yesterday. Okay, yesterday. So this is real time in the streets, literally. You know, real world scenario I'm going to discuss today. Okay, this is not 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago. This is today. Okay, and about what's happening right now in as it pertains to what I do. Okay, I've got a couple of other projects going on in Washington, D.C. area, and but today I'll just focus on one of them. Okay, so let's roll. So this is the BRRRR project. As we all know, BRRRR stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat, as coined by Brandon Turner and popularized by Brandon and also David. David's written a book which is available in the Bigger Pockets. This David Green, that is, in the bookstore if you want to get more details on his BRRRR strategy. But what I realized is that for the most part, that may work in some areas, but those systems didn't work in my market. Okay, and so I had to kind of modify it to make it more amenable, more palatable to a high price market like we're in. As I said before, I kind of went into the Section 8 model. So let's do a case study. So the backdrop is that this is a row house in Washington, D.C. A row house is in some parts of the country, you call that townhouses, and where you got houses on both sides. Okay, it's not a single, it's a single family house, but it's connected on both sides. Okay, and so it's a row house in Washington, D.C. It's in a neighborhood which is on the path of gentrification. What do I mean by that? Gentrification is, I think we're all familiar with that term. This is where a neighborhood that used to be in decline many years ago has now been sort of on the upswing, and longtime residents who used to live there, as it becomes more desirable, get priced out. Rents go up, property values go up, and those people who were there for a long time can no longer afford to live there, and they get squeezed and pushed out, essentially displaced. Okay, so that is going rampantly in Washington, D.C. and a lot of areas around the country. The purpose of this meeting, this discussion, is not to debate the pros and cons of gentrification. We can have that discussion another time. But this house is on the path of gentrification, which means that there are neighborhoods that surround it that are getting more expensive. And as a result of that, people are moving into this area because it used to be a bit more affordable. But as more people move in, the prices go up. So I could say that I don't know what it is for your area, but typically, gentrification may go from east to west, west to east, north to south, south to north, whatever it is for your area where it is. But, those trends are, it's going on in Washington, D.C. Anyway, this house is on the path of gentrification, and it was an MLS property. So it was listed, okay? And it was listed for $526,000. $526,000 was the list price for this row house in Washington, D.C. The house was, I kind of call it grandma's house. The previous owners owned it for a long time as an outdated design, and it was just grandma's house. Okay, and walls all over the place. So there was a separator between the living room and dining room, a separator between the dining room and the kitchen, separator between all these different rooms in the house. It wasn't the traditional modern design, which is open plan. It was your traditional old style 1930s, 40s, 50s. This house was built in 1905. Okay, so it's over almost 120 years old. This house. Okay, so this is not your new neighborhood. This is a very, very established area in Washington, D.C. It's about 105, 115, 20 years old. Okay, that's how long this house was built. Okay, so it was listed for $526,000, and I made an offer. It was the realtor who was one of my former students or current students who wants to be a part of my JV program, where they look over my shoulders for a deal, contacted me and say, "Hey Joe, there's a house at 123 Main Street. It's in your area that you're interested in, and and it meets your criteria, and I think we can make an offer on this." I said, "Well, how much do they want?" He said, or she said, $526,000, and I said, "Well, that's not going to work." So I made an offer for $470,000, I think. No, in fact, I made it for $450,000. Okay, they wanted $526,000. I offered $450,000, and because I bought another house not too far away for around that same price. So obviously, the seller didn't think much of my offer and rejected it. So I said, "No big deal," and just left it alone. And so the house just sat there because it's overpriced. Ultimately, the realtor contacted me and said, "It's still for list sale. Let's make another offer." I made another offer. I think let's say $460,000, $10,000 more. And they came down from $526,000 to $500,000. And anyway, to cut a long story short, ultimately I bought the house for $480,000. Okay, so $480,000 was the acquisition price for for this property. And it was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. Okay, 3 bedrooms. So on the first floor, you got a living room, dining room, kitchen. On the second floor, you got 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. In the basement, it was just, you know, a hodgepodge of stuff in the basement. Okay. And so this is what you get in DC for $480,000, a crappy house and in need of major renovations. Okay. So that's what we're dealing with in this area. And you know, as you know, since I want cash flow and it's 3 bedrooms, there's no way I can cash flow with a 3-bedroom house and paying $480,000 and require at least $150,000 renovation. It's not going to work. Okay. So therefore the question becomes, what do I do? And that's a common scenario in Washington, DC and other high price markets. What do you do when the cost of acquisition renovations is way more than what you can get in rent? And so I realized that, okay, then, since I do Section 8, I can possibly get cash flow if I increase the number of bedrooms in this house, okay? Because Section 8, they pay their rent based on 2 things: the location or the neighborhood or the zip code where the house is located. And the second thing is the number of bedrooms, okay? So, for example, as a 3-bedroom, if I kept the house as a 3-bedroom, I think the rent will be like $3,800, okay? If I made it into a 4-bedroom, the rent becomes $4,700, okay? If I made it into a 5-bedroom, the rent becomes $5,400, $5,426 to be exact, okay? So, same house, different rents based on the number of bedrooms. But this is a relatively small house. It's like the first and second floors amount to about 1,100 square feet. Okay, so it's not a big house. 1,100 square feet. The basement is another 500, let's say. So it's about a 1,600 square feet house. Okay, so the question becomes, how do you turn that thing into a 5-bedroom house? Okay, and based on past experience, the only leeway that you have is the basement. Okay. So in Washington, D.C. and lots of this area, there is a basement, and there is some potential if you have the wherewithal, the foresight to add extra bedrooms there. So that's where the creativity can come in, is to take this basement, which is unused, which is not adding value in terms of rent, and create 2 bedrooms. And because it's got 2 bedrooms down there, you're probably going to need a bathroom down there as well. Okay. So, so therefore the goal was to take this basement, add 2 bedrooms, and add a bathroom. Okay, because you don't want the person in the basement having to go all the way to the first floor, or second floor, I suppose, in order to go to the bathroom. It's not. I mean, that was okay in Grandma's day, but today people aren't going for that. They want a bathroom close to where they live, where they sleep, and so on. Okay, so the total amount of I estimated the renovation cost to be $175,000. $175,000 is what it's going to take to turn this thing around from a 3-bedroom, 1-bath into a 5-bedroom, 3.5-bath house. 5 bedrooms, 3.5-bath is what it's going to take to turn this grandma's outdated house into a HGTV style home. Now you may say, well, why are you doing that? Why are you spending $175,000? Are you crazy? Are you mad? Oh, is Dr. Joe gone psycho? You know, what's up with that nonsense? And you're going to give it to Section 8 as well? You're going to spend $175,000 and give it to a Section 8 value tenant? Are you insane? No, I'm not insane. I'm a businessman who has a heart, and I know how to make money in this niche. And it's possible to do that. And that's what I'm going to discuss right on. So acquisition price is $480,000. Renovation price estimate is $175,000. Add those 2 together, you come up with $655,000 is what it's going to take to buy this house and also to renovate it. Everybody got that? 480 acquisition, 175 renovation, 655, add the 2 together. Okay, obviously there's a lot of other costs. There's closing costs, there's taxes, there's points you got to pay, blah 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 blah. There's costs associated with it. But just for simplistic purposes, I'm going to leave that alone. I'm just going to go with the raw hard numbers. Okay, so I need to get $655,000 to buy this house and renovate it to the point whereby I can rent it out. Okay, so the next question is, okay, so where are you going to get $655,000 from? Good question. And so, now in the DC area, if you need to get $655,000, you're not going to get that from private investors. Okay, I know if I was in the market where you can buy houses for 100K, yeah, you may find somebody who's got 100K floating around, and they'll lend it to you, and for a decent return. I don't know anybody who's walking around with $655,000 in their pockets and say, "Hey, Joe, here's $750,000. Go at it." It doesn't work. Okay, so I can't go by some of those strategies that other people do in other markets. Okay, to raise that kind of money, you need deep pockets, and the deepest pocket are banks. Okay, because that's where the money is, and therefore my strategy has to have a component whereby I work with banks. Okay, because there's no way you can have that. Well, you can obviously, but I mean, there aren't a whole lot of people who are walking around with $750,000 who's prepared to give it to you. So I've developed relationships with local banks, commercial banks, and whereby I get lines of credit, or I've developed the relationships, and we can talk about how to do that. And it's doable because I'm teaching people how to do it. Where you can develop the relationships with these institutions, whereby they can fund part of that money. Okay. Now, if you don't have relationships with banks, then obviously the other sources could be hard money lenders and so on. But I just, out of my strategy, have decided to go after the banks because it's cheaper money and it's reliable money, and you can develop relationships, and hopefully they can keep on pulling you with that money. Okay, so the local bank that I went to, which I have a relationship with, which you can, wherever you are, they have agreed to fund 80% of the acquisition and 80% of the renovation. This is a commercial bank locally. And the cost of the money is relatively inexpensive. Well, it's 5.5%. 3/4 of a point, so it's not too bad, especially when compared to hard money, and that's the reason why I went that route. Is to save money on financing expenses. Okay, so a bank would lend 80% on the acquisition and 80% on the renovation. So what does that mean? That if you have $655,000 is what we need to raise, as I explained earlier on. 80% of the acquisition, 80% of the renovation amounts to $524,000. Okay, so the bank will borrow me $524,000, which still leaves a delta, because I need a total of 655 altogether. Okay, I hope I'm not losing anybody. I'm trying to keep it, not too complicated. So the banks is my tier one, or part one of my financing strategy. Part two of my financing strategy is to develop relationships with private investors. As I said before, it's difficult to raise $655,000 with private investors, but it's easier to raise $100,000 with private investors. Not easier. Well, it is easier. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not as insurmountable as if I was trying to raise $655,000. So in this case, a couple of private investors, $50,000, and I'll raise $100,000 with the from private investors. Okay, so $100,000 from private investors. I offer 8% return on the money, and so 524 plus 100,000, 624, which still leaves a delta, and that's where I use my money, personal money, to fund that delta plus anything else, overages, taxes, rehab expenses, overruns, insurance, utilities, blah, 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 holding cost, all those stuff that needs to take place from when you purchase the house to when you refinance it as part of the BRRRR strategy. I'm on the hook for that. Okay, so summarizing the financing strategy is 3 parts. Part 1 is the bank. Part 2 is private investors. Part 3 is personal money. Okay, so that's how I fund my transactions. So, okay, so I think that takes care of the acquisition, renovation, acquisition, financing, and I'm going to kind of transition now to discuss the rehab. Okay, because you know, the rehab is the central part of this entire project. But we're going to spend 175,000. So the question is, how did that go? What do you do? And so on. Okay, so I break down my renovation. So we've done the buy, which is the first B in the BRRRR. We kind of transition now into the first R, which is renovation. Okay, so I break down my renovation process into 11 stages. 11 stages. Okay, and I there's not enough time for me to go through each one of these in detail. That will take me a week, and you know, I can spend a day on each one. But just for the purpose of this discussion, the 11 phases are what I call project planning. Okay, demo, groundwork, roughing inspections, exterior, interior, kitchen, bathrooms, finished products, and then finally the final inspection. So I'll just kind of briefly go through those. And what do I mean by that? Okay, so first part is what I call project planning. What does that mean? That is sort of the developing the scope of the project. What are we going to do? Which walls are we going to take out? Where we're going to put the kitchen? Where we're going to put the bathrooms? Where we're going to put, you know, the bedrooms? What are we going to do here? What we're going to do there? That's all part of that planning walkthrough and so forth. And so what's the game plan? What's the strategy? What's the scope of this project? Okay. And then what's the sort of timeline, you know, for this project? What's the budget? How are we going to handle things like overruns? How are we going to handle things like scope change? How are we going to handle things like disputes with a contractor? How are we going to handle things like how many people should be on the job? How are we going to handle all these things? Okay, this is all part of that planning phase. And permits. What permits do we need for this house? Who's going to get the permits? When are we going to get the permits? How are we going to handle inspections? How are we going to handle this? How are we going to handle that? That's all part of that planning phase. Okay, and you know, so obviously, to a central part of that is to identify potential contractors. So you have to kind of maybe take out some bids and decide who you're going to select, and then work through all those issues I've just described. Okay, so that's all part of this planning. So once all that is completed, we now have identified who the contractor is going to be, how much the project is going to be, the scope of the project, and all the logistics associated with that project. Everybody got it? So that is the show me some love if you're, or show me some what's it called, likes, or make sure I'm not overrunning anybody. Okay, show me some love, please, especially on Instagram. There you go. Okay, now the project is started. So the first thing we do is what we call demo. And there, love is in the house. Thank you, thank you. I can't see the love on YouTube and on Facebook. So you know, so I suppose Nikki's going to have to tell me. But there's a lot of love going on in Instagram country. And so anyway, so we then go on to the first part of the project. The project kicks off. What do we do? The first thing we do is what we call demo. Okay. In this project, it's a full gut, which means that we're essentially gutting everything out. We're taking everything out, and all essentially we're going to have full walls, the perimeter of the house on each level. Okay. Everything on the inside is going to be demoed out and thrown away, hauled away, and so on. Okay. So we're going to end up with essentially, you know, what do you call that thing? A gut. It's a gut job, and essentially it's just a shell of a house on each level. Okay, everything in the middle is removed. So we have to. There's a lot of trash that's generated, a lot of debris that's generated. There's a lot of stuff, you know, associated with that, and it's just gut back-breaking, hard slog for the contractors. So that's the demo. And also, the house may not be in great condition, so you do some landscaping on the exterior, so that way the house looks, acceptable if people walk by and things like that. Okay, so now in this particular house, the next phase is what we call groundwork. Okay, we did quite a bit of work in the basement because that's where we're going to have the two bedrooms in the bathroom. So it's quite a bit of work in the basement in terms of the things like digging, in terms of replacing the old plumbing lines, replacing the slab, the foundation slab. All those kind of things have to be removed and replaced. Again, don't forget we're in a 125-year-old house, so a lot of the systems there are outdated and not really compliant with code. And since I'm intending on keeping this house for the long haul, I'd rather just put everything up to date, and that way, spend the money now, and therefore I don't have to worry about it for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Okay, so we put in new plumbing systems that connect to the city sewage lines. We put new lines in there, plumbing lines, water lines, and so forth throughout the house. And ultimately, you do what we call a new foundation requires different levels of inspections. Okay, once that is done, we then move into phase 4 or step 3 of that 11-part, so step 4, I suppose, of that 11-part process. And that is what we call roughing. Okay, so the assumption now is that we have the architectural drawings. Architect is the one that pulls does the design, and then we get the permits from the city for the building permit. That's a whole process in itself, getting the kind of walkthrough, navigating that sort of city bureaucracy. But ultimately, the architect is the one that comes up with the design and comes up with the permits. So we have a building permit now, and then from this building permit, we then get the other permits, which is the electrical permits, plumbing permits, and the HVAC permits. Okay. There was another permit in this project, which is what we call a demo permit. That's the first permit that we had, the demo permit. Anyway, so we have these permits, and then that then allows us to do what we call roughing work. What does that mean? It means that we frame up the house based on the design. Okay, so we lay out on the second floor where the bathroom is going to be, where the bedroom is going to be, the size of the bedrooms, where the bathroom is going to be here, on the first floor, where the kitchen is going to be, where the dining room is going to be, where the half bathroom is going to be, in the basement, where the bedroom is going to be, the bathroom is going to be, and so on. All that stuff has to be framed out. And once that is done, then the specialists come in. The HVAC person comes next. They run the ducts around the house, and then the plumber comes in next. They run in the plumbing lines, the water lines throughout the whole house. And then the electrician comes in, and he runs or she runs the electrical wires throughout the entire house as well. Okay, so at the end of phase 4, we have finished all what we call roughing. Okay, and then after that comes to the next step, which is the inspections. So all that stuff has to get inspected by the city, or wherever you are in Washington, D.C., there's an agency that's responsible for building code enforcement, and they then come in and then they check to make sure all the plumbing is correctly done, the electrical is correctly done, HVAC is correctly done, all the framing is done correctly, it's compliant with code and things like that. Okay, since my contractor is very familiar with that process, we don't usually have a problem because they know what the code is and they pretty much do everything in compliance with code. So there's an inspection that comes in, and then the inspector, hopefully if you pass, they sign off. And then after that, we put the insulation to make sure you got the right insulation. Then the inspector comes back, signs off on that, and then we can then start what we call close it in, which is to put the drywall and so on. We can do the exterior work, we can do the remaining of the interior, like the drywall, the trims, the doors, the flooring, the painting. Then we do the kitchen, and then the bathrooms, and all the final finishes like the cabinets, the hardwood floors, any landscaping that needs to be done, and so forth and so forth and so on. Again, this is just a high-level summary. We can go into a lot of detail in each of those phases, but just for the sake of simplicity, you know, I'll just keep it brief. And then ultimately, we then get the final inspections. So we call the city back, and the inspector comes in, they check everything, make sure everything's up to code and compliant, and then ultimately they sign off on that. We get the final inspection, okay? So, and then that then allows it, that then pretty much wraps up the renovation process. For this particular project, that renovation process was about 4.5 months, okay? And so we ended up with a 5-bedroom, 3.5 bath house. I estimated 175,000 for the renovation. It turned out to be 195,000, so a little bit over. And but it's a beautiful HGTV home. In fact, if Nikki is on the line, Nikki, do you want to, what's it called, quickly? Okay, so this is the before of the exterior of the house, and let's have a look what the final one looks like. Ta-da! As you can see, it looks pretty decent on the outside. Okay, you gotta apologize for the folks on Instagram. You may not be able to see this, but just, you know, bear with me, and hopefully you know, you'll be able to see this another time. But that's the exterior of the house. It's painted. It looks pretty nice. It's very nice, neutral colors and so on. So let's go to the next one, Nikki. Okay, we're now, this is the rear of the house, and as you can see, it's, you know, a pretty small house. No big deal. You've got these bars all over the place, and just kind of ugly. Let's have a look at the final one, please. And this is, as I said, we've got new siding here, nice fresh colors, and looks pretty nice, and so on. Let's go to the next one, please. This is the living room. So as you can see, there's a lot of walls around the house. This is, you know, there's walls that separate the living room from the dining room. There's walls that separate the living room from the main hallway area. There's just a lot of walls around the house. Let's look at the final one, please. As you can see, this is the final of the living room. Hopefully you can see it clearly. As you can see, everything's pretty much open plan. All the walls have been taken out. It looks like a typical HGTV home. The house is staged. So it's got the furniture, all the artwork and knickknacks on the floor, on the walls and everything. It's got hardwood floors, as you can see it down here. Hardwood floors on the floors here, hardwood floors on the stairs. And there's a half bathroom on here. And on the first floor is living room, dining room, and kitchen. Next one, please. And this is the dining room. And as you can see, there's walls that separate the dining room from the living room. And in this particular case, the original kitchen was on the right-hand side of the house, and like a gallery style house, kind of closed in. And so what we did was to put the kitchen towards the back of the house. Let's look at the next picture, please. And this is the dining room here. Let's go to the next one, please. As you can see, the kitchen is towards the back. And this is the old kitchen. As you can see, it looks kind of, you know, closed in, you know, a little bit sort of, I don't know, claustrophobic. Let's look at the final kitchen, please. As you can see, this is more of a modern style, you know, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances. We've got a pantry in the house. It looks real, real nice. It's modern and it's beautiful. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this is the old bathroom, you know, grandma's bathroom, kind of tacky. It's not the greatest bathroom. And let's have a look at the next one. We turn that from that into this. This is more of a modern style. You know, nice ceramic tiles on the walls, nice tubs, and nice vanities and so on. Let's go to the next one. This is another bathroom, another view of the bathroom. Let's go to the next one, please. And as you can see, it's a much nicer bathroom here. And I'll just go to one more since we don't have a whole lot of time. This is the bedroom. You know, as you can see, this, you know, it's not the greatest bedroom, but we took it from this situation to the next one, which is the final bedroom. And as you can see, nice, looks pretty good. That's the master bedroom, and the master bedroom has its own private bathroom, and so on. So we got a few because of time. I'm going to, if we got more time, maybe I'll go through some more photographs later on. So let's just continue with the discussion. But you get the gist. It's a HGTV style home. Beautiful. And the renovation comes up to $195,000. Okay. So let's go back to the numbers. I bought it for $480. Spent $195 on the renovation, which add those two together, it comes up to $675,000. Okay, $480 acquisition, $195 renovation, it comes up to $675,000. So now we finish the first R, which is the renovation, and then we move to the second R, which is the rent. So in this situation, once the house is done, it was staged as you saw by the photographs, and I placed the house for rent in several local online sources where I just based on experience, a lot of voucher holders tend to go to. So I advertised there, and because we're right in the middle of the COVID-19, typically I get overwhelmed with calls. But this time around, I just sense that a lot of people aren't just moving, they're just playing stationary. And so we didn't get as many calls as I normally get, but it is what it is. And we ended up with three, and I normally get like between 10 to 15 applications for my homes. This time around, because we got fewer showings, all the showings had to be, by appointment only. There was no open houses. It was against the law in Washington, D.C., because of the COVID-19 environment. So we had to have sort of appointments for our showings. Anyway, we ended up with three applications. And I ended up selecting, as part of my process, I verify rental history, call the current landlord, previous landlord. Like I talked about last time, I check income, I check credit. I also make a personal appointment to go visit a person's home. So we did all that as part of the process. And I ended up selecting this family. She has a 5-bedroom voucher. Excellent family. Immaculate condition when I went to the home. Good references from the landlords. I verified all of that. And just got a real good rental history. And she was just a good person who just happened to live in a bad area, and she wanted a lot for her family. She's just no different than you and I. She had dreams and visions for the success of her children and so forth, but just wanted to be in a different environment so that can be a reality, especially relative to where she was living in a 3-bedroom apartment, and she had a 5-bedroom voucher, and but she wanted to live in a home. And when she saw my home, she loved it. She was in love with the house. She was ecstatic when I offered it to her. It's like a dream come true for her. I mean, I videotaped it. So maybe, what's it called? You guys need to be there when what we're doing is really life changing. And we're making a big difference in people's lives and so on. So it was just a very emotional time when I offered it to her and her family, and it's just the tears of joy and so forth. Anyway, so I completed the screening process. I then offered the house to the family. She accepted the offer, and then that kicks off the quote unquote Section 8 process. Okay, so there's paperwork that has to be submitted to the housing authority. Again, that's a whole nother discussion as well, but let's just say that there's documentation that's required to be submitted to the housing authority to prove that who I am, I own the house, who's going to pay utilities, how much rent do I want. They want my bank account because everything is done by direct deposit. They want driver's license, they want W-9s, they want a whole bunch of stuff. Proof of ownership, which includes things like the deed, to make sure that I am the actual owner and I'm not somebody who's impersonating the owner, and so on. So there's a lot of things that you have to submit, which is not a big deal, but you do what you got to do. You submit it in, and then once they review it, approve it, then they schedule an inspector to come out in this time round, because of COVID-19, we did something different this time. We had a virtual inspection, which I've never done one of those before, where I went to the property, had my mobile phone, and the inspector was, I don't know where, maybe at home or wherever, and we kind of walked through the house and turn the water on, turn the garbage disposer on, press the smoke detector to make sure it's working, and so forth and so on. It's like a virtual inspection. Very pleasant experience, to tell you the truth. Anyway, it passed, and then once it passed, what's it called? Then more paperwork went through, and ultimately yesterday, the tenant moved in. Okay, so let's go through the numbers. So where we are is that the tenant moved in yesterday, and the approved rent for this house is $5,462. $5,462 for this house is what the housing authority approved for this property, given the location and given the number of bedrooms. Okay, so let's go through some numbers here. I bought the house, as I said before, for $480. Renovated for for $195. It comes up to $675, and therefore I need, if I want to do a complete BRRRR, I need to refinance this house and get $675,000 new loan. Okay, so the after repair value around that area is about $750,000, $750,000. Okay. Now I know wherever you may think, wherever you are, you probably think if $750,000 is like a mansion on the hill. In DC, it is absolutely no big deal. $750,000 it's a row house. I mean, you saw the photographs, and so on. So I need to refinance this house and try to pull as much money as I can as part of the next R, the refinance process. Okay. So what am I going to do? So this is, now that the tenant's moved in, I can now start the refinance process, because you have to wait till there's income to prove to the bank. You got to show them the lease and the Section 8 contracts to prove that there's a legitimate contract available to offset the new mortgage that's going to take place. Hope everyone follow me. And so I've got a local bank which I've developed a relationship with, and they like what I do. They like the fact that I'm providing opportunities to low-income families. They like the fact that I'm in sort of affordable housing space. They like the fact that I'm making a difference in people's lives, and they really understand the business model which I'm associated with. As a result of that, they're really good in terms of their financing. So the last house that I did, I'll just kind of go through the interest rates and so on. So we refinanced it. This is a commercial loan at I think it's 3.2% interest rate, which is pretty good for a commercial loan. It's a 7-year term, amortized over 25 years. Most commercial loans are amortized over 25 years, usually between 5, 7, or 10-year resets. So this is a 7-year reset, amortized over 25 years. Principal amount is $675, which is what I'm shooting for. The ARV is $750, and last time I was able to get, they went to about 85 or 87% loan to value, okay, which is more than most other banks, which are usually 70 to 75%. This bank will go higher, just based on the relationship and also the fact that my mission is directly in sync with their mission, and great relationship. Anyway, so plug in the numbers in your calculator. 3.2%, amortized over 25 years, principal $675, comes up with a principal and interest payment of $3,272, $3,272. Okay, that's PI. Now you add on the taxes and insurance. In this case, I'm just going to throw in $600 a month for taxes and insurance. And so you add those two together, PITI, 3,272 plus 600 is 3872. So 3872 is the principal, interest, tax, and insurance payment going out. Okay, the rent is 5462, 5,462. You subtract the two together, and it comes up with a gross cash flow of $1,590 a month. Okay, $1,590 a month is a gross cash flow. And because I've spent $195,000 on the renovations, most of the capital expenses is pretty much taken care of. Everything there is new electrical, new plumbing, new roof, new this, new that. Everything is new. So therefore, your maintenance and repair cost is going to be relatively small compared to if I left the house as it was 100 years old. Okay, and so on. So okay, so there's a new loan of $675. ARV is $750, which means there's $75,000 in equity from day one, and there's a gross cash flow of $1,590. And refinance based on past experience is going to take about 45 to 60 days to complete. So that, my friends, is the numbers. There are the numbers, and what's it called? And that's where that's what I do. I've got a tenant who absolutely loves the home. This is a dream come true. She is going to live there forever. Okay, she is not planning on moving, period. Okay, and as a buy and hold investor, you don't want turnover. Turnover and vacancy is the biggest killer. My turnover and vacancy cost is zero. Okay, so therefore the cash flow that I'm making stays in my pocket, as opposed to having to recycle that every time there's a vacancy and a turnover. So the profit margins, it's pretty good. So anyway, so that's how I do. I wanted to kind of deep dive into this. So that's what I do in terms of the BRRRR strategy and how I make it work in a high price market like Washington, D.C. The Section 8 program is a federal program. So what I just described works in every part of the country. Wherever you are, there's a housing authority. Now the rents obviously is going to be different between what you have in your area and what I do here, but the concept is still the same. Now whether there's a need for 5 bedrooms where you are or 6 bedrooms, I don't know. Whether they pay what they pay, I don't know. It's very local specific. But what I had to do was to figure out how it could work in my local area in Washington, D.C. And, I mean, this is what I do. I do give people the opportunity to look over my shoulders as we do this, so that way they can learn and they can go out there and do it themselves. I really do. I want to encourage more people to do what I'm doing, and because it works. And this house, I expect that 10 years from now, it's probably going to be worth around $850, $900. There's houses I bought, which I bought for $150, which is now worth $600,000-$700,000. So that's the reason why I do what I do. I like appreciation because I think that that's where the real money is. But the asset still has the cash flow in the process. So, I think that I've done a lot of gabbing. It's now 1:56. I know that for the folks on Instagram, when we hit the clock strikes 12, which is going to be in 4 minutes, you may have to go onto the YouTube and also onto or Facebook. I think Nikki's going to send a link or put a link on the screen. So essentially, you're going to have to go to the story on Instagram, and she's going to put a link there whereby you can, press the link and then go off and continue in Facebook and or YouTube. Okay, so that's for the folks down on Instagram. But for the folks who are watching me on YouTube and Facebook, we'll just continue the discussion. So hopefully you found this enjoyable. Hopefully it's informative. There's a lot of meat there. But I mean, I could talk about any of those things for a day. So I just did a very, very high level summary. And but this is what I do. And I'm doing it right now. So I'm not just talking about what I used to do. I'm talking about what I'm doing. So with that said, I'm going to get some Q&A. And so if you got some questions, please fire it on your screen, and I'll do as much as I can before I get turned off. Okay, let me take a little drink first. Okay, I got a question here from Facebook from John. I'm assuming the only way these numbers make sense for single family rentals will be low income government funded. No, not really. No, I mean, I have market renters as well, where I do the same thing. So not all my houses are Section 8. I've got some market renters, and in some of my properties that I can. The issue is wherever you are, if you want to get into real estate investing, then you're going to have to choose. Are you going to go with a cash flow strategy, okay, or you're going to go for an appreciation strategy, or I want both, okay? So I had to figure out how it work in my market on both, and I sort of I won't call it stumbled upon, but this is what I developed, that works in this market where I am, and hopefully, wherever you are, John, if this doesn't work for you, then hopefully you're still interested in investing in real estate, and therefore you're going to have to either modify your strategy accordingly. But no, I mean, I love the Section 8 program. There's a stereotype with low-income families. No, a lot of them are fantastic people. They are no different than you and I, and they're just looking for somebody to give them a chance, somebody. And because most landlords, once they hear the word Section 8, they run for the hills. And which means that those families aren't given the chance to live in a decent area and so on. They're just tired of living in crappy neighborhoods, renting from crappy landlords, and living in crappy houses. Okay, next one. How did I find a tenant to have such a big voucher? I mean, there are voucher holders in everywhere. So I don't know where you are, but yeah, I mean, I advertise. They know it's a 5-bedroom house. In this area where I am, I spent some time developing relationships with the housing authority. And what kept on coming across was there was a shortage of 4, 5, and 6-bedroom houses, okay, in this area where I am. And because most houses are 3 bedrooms, naturally, like the one I just bought. It was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. So there's a lot of 3 bedrooms. But there aren't a whole lot of 4, 5, and 6s, and so therefore, but there's a demand for them. So there's a lot of voucher holders with 4, 5, and 6-bedroom vouchers, but they don't have many 4, 5, and 6-bedroom houses to choose from. So it's high demand, low supply, high demand, low supply, and I realized that was the basis for a business, and that's what I do. Okay, but they're out there, at least in this area. Okay, let's keep rolling. I'm in New York City, but investing in Florida. Well, I mean, this is a federal program. So, it's out there where you are. I think we're going to have to, oh boy. I think we're going to have to run off in a few minutes on Instagram. So the folks on Instagram, you're going to have to get ready to go on to Facebook and, and so on. So just keep on going until we'll go there. Does anyone know his IG name? My IG name is Dr. Joe, Dr. Joe Asamoah, Asamoah, Joe Asamoah. That's my ID. Okay, another question on Instagram. Okay, also, I was told that if Section 8 tenants don't keep the property up, they can lose their Section 8 voucher. I don't know how true that is. But it's an incentive for Section 8 holders to take care of the property. Yeah, I mean, this is a nice home, and I'm giving it to a family who knows they've hit the jackpot. They know it, I know it, we all know it, and they are not going to jeopardize their voucher. They know this is a dream come true. They're going to treasure this opportunity. They are eternally grateful that somebody, i.e. me, gave them a chance to live there, and they're going to pay their rent on time. They're going to keep the house up. They're not going to cause any drama, and and they're going to stay a long time. This lady is planning on staying there forever, okay, and so on. So that's I mean, it's a nice house, and so on. Okay, let's keep rolling. He's between former, a lot of questions here. Oh God. Helping people build generational wealth. Yes. Cash flow. What's your cash flow? I think I've talked about that. Raising $300 million, buy another apartment complex. I'm not sure what that's about. Rent vacation homes. I'm guessing the requirements vary by state to state. Okay, my first single family house I'm closing in 2 weeks is also for Section 8 tenants. I have also had to submit. I also have to submit landlord applications once I get the deal. Once you get the house that you have, you can you find a tenant. There's no such thing as a Section 8 house. You have to find a tenant who has a Section 8 voucher, and you accept that person and who has the voucher. Once you select that person with the voucher, then you kick off the process. Okay. So, Nikki, do you want to put another one up, please? How do I find out Section 8 rents in a particular area? It should be advertised. There is a local housing authority wherever you are based. And so I will do a Google search, find out who the local housing authority is in your area. I would contact them, and they will tell you, how much do they pay? How do they determine, what the rents are? In Washington, D.C., it's based on the neighborhoods. And in other areas, especially like in Maryland or Virginia, it's based on the zip code. Okay. So you have to find out how do they determine what the rents are. It's usually either neighborhood or zip code. And that's the first thing you need to find out. And the second thing is how much do they pay for a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bedroom house? That's the next thing you want to find out. And also, does that include utilities or not include utilities? I do not want to pay utilities myself. All my tenants pay their own utilities. So that's how you find out. Hope I got Sufyan, how it works for your area. Okay. Okay, okay, I've done that. I think we're running out of time on Instagram, I think. Thanks for the deep dive. Okay, you're welcome. And Asamoah, yep, Joe Asamoah, that's me. Okay, Nikki, throw another one. What happened with the 100K loan you took out at 8%? Okay, so once I do, good question, Randy. So I think the numbers was that let's have a look. Bought it for 480. 175 was the initial estimate for the rehab, and 524 is what I borrowed from the bank. 100,000 from the private investor, 8%. So once I do the refinance, essentially get the $675,000 back. Okay, I then pay off the first the bank. Okay, the 524. Okay, and then I then pay off the private investors, the 100,000 that you put on the screen, plus their interest. And if there's any other monies out there, that's what kind of comes back to me. But in this case, there was an overrun, and there are other costs that I didn't really include in the calculations: taxes, transfer taxes, recordation taxes, utilities, holding costs, all those kind of stuff wasn't in that calculation. So that's when I do the refinance. That's when I pay off all what I call short-term financing and replace it with permanent financing. Okay, let's what as a landlord do you pay for just the property tax? Now, as a landlord, I just pay the property taxes, and that is it, because the tenants pay their own utilities, and that's it. And the mortgage, obviously, I pay the mortgage, and if there's any repairs that needs to be done, that's my responsibility. But that all comes out of the $1,500 a month cash flow. Okay, Nikki, how did the buyer come up with a down payment? Did they get down payment assistance? How did the buyer? There is no buyer. How did the buyer come up with the down payment? Well, I'm the buyer because I bought the house. So, if the question is, the renter. Okay, I'm sorry. How did the renter come up with a down payment? I mean, the security deposit. In this area, I mean, the rent is $5,462 a month, and the security deposit is also 1 month's rent. So for the tenant to move in, they have to come up with 1 month's rent plus the security deposit. Okay, so the security deposit, there are assistants, there are organizations locally that can assist with that. The housing authority assists with that as well. And so it's just a mishmash of funds to get the security deposit. And they use obviously their own personal monies. And in terms of the first month's rent, the housing authority determines the rent for the tenants. I don't. I just get, we have a contract which states what the total rent is and what portion of that the housing authority is going to pay, and the difference is what the tenant pays. Okay, it could be several $100s a month and so forth. Okay, so hopefully that, so yeah, so to answer your question, Diane, it was a mixture of the tenant's personal money. They got some assistance from the housing authority. They also, there are some organizations here that also provide some assistance as well. Okay. Okay, next question, Nikki. Does the voucher amount change as a tenant oh well. This is from KJW King. Does the voucher amount change as a tenant's children grow up and move out? Yes. Not so much as they move out, but not as they grow up, sorry. It's when they move out. So the person's voucher size is based on the number of people in the household. So if as the family grows, if one of the kids move out, then the size of the family goes down, and that could trigger, as part of their what they call recertification, it could trigger them being downgraded from, let's say, a 5-bedroom to a 4-bedroom voucher. If that happens, then the prospective tenant may not be able to live there anymore because her voucher is for a lower amount than what I'm requesting for the rent. And that's usually when tenants leave, is when their voucher gets downgraded from one level to another as the children grow older, and so on. Okay. Okay. What is the Facebook page he's referring to? Oh God. I'm a new landlord and this is crazy. What's crazy? I don't know if this is crazy, but this is what it is. Okay, next question, please, Nikki. Do you furnish the home? No, I do not. The houses are unfurnished. We do have staging, as you can see by the photographs. We stage our homes, and so but before the tenant moves in, we take all the staging furniture out of the house. Okay, so staging is just primarily for aesthetics, get that sort of emotional connection with the tenants and with the prospective tenants and so forth. Okay, so I don't leave furniture in the home. In fact, I don't think you're allowed to leave any furniture in the home, but everything has to be removed. Okay, next one, Nikki. How do you get new mortgage approved for the next property for the BRRRR when you have the current mortgage from the refinance? How do you get new mortgage approved for the next property for the BRRRR? Okay, got it. So if you recall, I buy a house. In this case, I buy the house, rehab it, find a tenant. Once the tenant moves in, there's income coming in. Okay. And the mortgage company wants to make sure that I have sufficient income to be able to offset the new mortgage. Okay. It's, in the residential side, they call that debt to income ratio. So they want to make sure that my income offsets the debt. Okay. So since I have a new tenant, I can show them a lease. I can show them a contract, between the housing authority and myself. It's called a HAP contract. So I show the mortgage company this contract, which says that every month there's a contractual arrangement between myself and the housing authority for this amount of rent. And I then give that to the bank, and then they'll use that as a calculation to determine how much they can borrow me, how much they're prepared to borrow me based on that, and so on. So once I get the new loan, then obviously I have income from the rent, which is offsetting the expenses, mortgages, and so on. And therefore, they're okay with that. Okay, and therefore that frees me up to buy another house, because that asset, that house is generating income, which is offsetting the mortgage. Okay, so it kind of balances out the debt to income ratio and so on. Now, if I didn't have a tenant, if I didn't have a lease, then I could only do this maybe one time. Okay, that's why it's important you don't do the refinance until you have a tenant in place, so you can offset the new mortgage with the new rent. Okay. Whoa. A lot of good questions here. I mean, you like, what is the feedback page? Let's see if I can keep on going. This is from Bruce. What are 2 to 3 indicators that a home is in the path of progress? Good question. That is very localized knowledge. And if you don't live in that area, this is the part where I disagree with a lot of these turnkey guys, or people who are buying houses all over the place and don't know anything about the market which they're buying. Okay, is that the path of progress is very, very local knowledge. Okay, either you associate with people who are very knowledgeable of your area where you're investing, because they can tell you the path of progress. I mean, wherever you are, you know where the trends are, where the prices are expensive, where it's cheap, where progress typically goes from. It could be east to west, it could be west to east, it could be south to north, it could be north to south. I don't know. I know in Washington, D.C. area, generally it's sort of based around west to east, close to metro stations, subway stations, close to transportation hubs. I mean, that's usually on the path of progress. And so but I know that. You may not know that if you live in I don't know, Michigan somewhere. Okay, so to you, if you live in Michigan, Washington, D.C. is all the same. And if you're listening to this podcast or this live stream, you may think, wow, Washington, D.C., these rents are crazy. Let me go invest there. But the rents which I'm sharing with you is not the same everywhere in Washington, D.C. Okay, it's only certain areas in Washington, D.C., certain neighborhoods in Washington, D.C., not everywhere in Washington, D.C. So, it becomes very localized. And that's why there's value. And if you're not investing in a local area, then you team up with people who are knowledgeable, whether it be property managers, whether it be real estate agents, whether it be brokers or whatever. They understand the market which you're investing in, and they'll tell you, hopefully anyway, what areas are the better areas and what areas are likely to appreciate in value, and which areas you probably may not. And the reason why I like to go on the path of progress is because that's how the money is. It is what it is. Most of the money that it's through appreciation. It's nice to get a few $100s a month cash flow. That's well and good. But the beauty is when you buy something for $480 and give it 5 years from now, it's worth $1 million. Okay. And that dwarfs $100 a month, $200, $300 a month cash flow. It dwarfs it. And so on. So that's my thinking. But again, everyone's different, and other investors, they see appreciation as icing on the cake. No, I see appreciation as the cake, and I want to make sure I've got cash flow in order to be able to survive, and so I can eat the cake. And when I get hungry, I eat when it's pretty. Pretty ridiculous analogy. but you understand what I'm saying. It's not the icing. As far as I can say, the appreciation is the cake. And and so I take it from that perspective, and I invest with that in mind. And but again, everybody's different. I'm just sharing with you how I think. You may or may not agree with me, but that's okay. And so on. Okay, Nikki, do you have monthly positive cash flow. Yes, I have monthly positive cash flow on all my properties, including this one. I think the example I've just gave, I went through the numbers earlier on. It's like $1,500 or something, gross cash flow, and so on. Okay, this is from Shadi. Have you been seeing more landlords start to promote and rent to voucher holders after the pandemic? Yes, I think that more and more people are realizing that Section 8 is a more reliable income stream. And Section 8 is it's almost, I wouldn't say it's recession immune, it's recession resistant. Okay. You know, I mean, I've had tenants, if you go through, I've been through 4 of these recessions. Okay. And I have a pretty good idea how these shake out. And it's not pretty when you have a good tenant who's lived in your home for a year or 2 or more, and they lose their jobs and they can't pay you. Okay, that is not a nice situation to be in. They're good people, but they don't have a job, and which means that they can't pay the rent. So now your relationship is probably going to go south. Okay, and you know, you don't want to evict them, but you know, you have to do what you got to do. You know, once the moratoriums have gone and things like that. With the Section 8 program, most of the rent is paid by the housing authority, and the tenant's portion is a small amount relative to that total altogether. So if the tenants, and the way it works is that if the tenant's income goes, their rent is based on their income. So if their income goes down, then their contribution towards the total rent goes down as well. Okay. If their income goes up, then their portion of the rent also goes up. Okay. So in a downturn, in recession, if they lose their job, then their income goes down, and which means that the government's portion, the housing authority's portion, goes up. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. There has never, and I'll say this, there has never been a month whereby if I had a tenant in that house, I didn't get the money from the housing authority. Never in 30 years. Okay, it's about as reliable as you get, and so on. So it's truly recession resistant. And you know, when you're paying rents of $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, if I rent it to market tenants, they may stay a year or 2, 3 max, and they'll be gone because they want to buy their own house. They're not going to pay me $3,000, $4,000 for too long. Whereas for a voucher holder, they're not going to buy the house. They just they see things differently. They just want to live in a nice house in a nice area and rent from the greatest landlord in the world, aka moi, and so on. Okay, let's have a look. Next question, please. What's the best advice for an 18-year-old that wants to do real estate investing full time? This is from Lixon. You know, I hope I spelled that right, Lixo. What's the best advice? I think it's fantastic. I think you should start. The earlier you can start, the better. I'm really impressed that you have this, this goal. What would I do if I was in your shoes? One, I would decide on, first of all, what are your goals for real estate investing? You know, in terms of, what are your strengths? What are you good at? What are your areas of weaknesses? You know, you're kind of a people person. You're more of an analytical kind of person. Are you, I mean, everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Okay. So I would say take the time to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. And then I would definitely get the buy-in from your family, friends, especially your family if you're 18 years old. Make sure that they're on board. Make sure that they're going to be, okay with, they're not thinking you're crazy and you're a psycho case. You know, hopefully they got, you got the buy-in from your family. And then I would decide, first of all, decide an area of focus, whatever that may be. If it's what I do, which is buy and hold, that's it. If you want to do fix and flip, fine. If you want to do wholesaling, fine. You know, whatever your area of focus is that you decide based on your strengths and your weaknesses and what you want to do, then I would then take the time to drill down to become more knowledgeable about that one particular niche. Okay, so you don't want to do it all. Just focus on one area and find somebody in your area, Lixo, who's doing what it is that you're doing. Not just doing it, but who's successfully doing what you're doing. Okay, there's two different things. Okay, in terms of people doing it and people who are successfully doing it. Okay, it's two different things. And so you want to find people who are successfully doing what it is that you want to do, and then possibly, you know, go out there and do it. I mean, that's all there is to it. You just pull the trigger, get going, and great that you're starting early. And believe me, you know, if I had to do it again, 3 things. 1, I wish I started earlier. Okay. 2, I wish I bought more houses. 3, I wish I kept more houses, not sold them. And, you know, and so on. So that's just sort of my advice based on my experiences. So hopefully, you know, that's helpful for you, Lixo. Okay. Oh boy, another one. What's the best advice you give for a 16-year-old? Oh, good Lord. So 60-year-old, probably the same thing. Instead of saying 16, just go 17, go younger. Okay. Next one's King Cough. Hopefully that's right. Do you put aside reserve cash for repairs in case tenants damage property after they move out? Yes, you want to have some reserves in the property. Sorry, not property, in your account. I typically suggest that you have at least 2 to 3 months worth of reserves for things like repairs, vacancies, turnovers, unexpected repair items and things like that. So definitely you want to have some reserves. It's up to you how much you want to keep in reserves, but I typically suggest 2 to 3 months, and so on. Okay. Next question, please, Nikki. What do you think about the housing prices and foreclosure rates will be in next 12 to 18 months? What do you think about them? That's a good question, Daniel. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in 12 to 18 months. Nobody knows. But I do know that if you're having all these people losing their jobs and this COVID-19 carrying on for a while, which it looks like it's going to be, it's going to have an impact on the economy. It's going to have an impact on people's incomes. And we may be heading, well, we are in a recession right now. So we are technically in a recession. So how long this recession goes on for, I don't know. But what I do know, having gone through 4 of these things, and this will be my 5th one, is that it's going to create a lot of opportunities, okay? Especially if you are, quote, bankable, whatever that means. I mean, bankable means that you're able to get money, okay? Because as people lose their homes, as people need to sort of sell quickly or whatever it is, okay, it means that those people are able to execute fast, are able to get some good deals. So I would suggest that now is the time to become bankable, get your financial house in order, get some reserves, look at your credit, find out what banks are looking for, and make sure you position yourself to be able to get the money. Okay, but it's going to be some good opportunities, and as long as you can ride out the storm, okay, because that storm could be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, no one knows. Okay, and that's why I like to buy and hold, especially if it's cash flowing. With a tenant who has no intentions of leaving, is that you're able, with Section 8 especially, is that you have a very reliable, very stable income stream, and you got a family there who's going to stay a long time, and your income is pretty much guaranteed. So it's a very resistant strategy, recession-resistant strategy, and especially during these sort of turbulent times that we'll be going through the next 12 months, 18 months, or a year or 2, or whatever it's going to be. Okay, let's keep going. I think I've got time for about one more, I think, because the clock is almost to 1.5 hours. How easy is it to work with a housing authority? It depends on you, Naveen. Housing authorities, they're bureaucracies, and they're not the easiest place to work with, but it's all about relationships. I would suggest that you take the time to invest in those relationships, get to know who the people are down there, get to understand, take the time to go over there. Sometimes these housing authorities have meetings where they invite landlords or prospective investors to come over to learn more about those programs. I would suggest that you go down there and, get to know people, because it really, really does help. If you have relationships, it just makes it so much easier to get stuff done. If you run into a problem, you can call somebody, you can email somebody, and they know who you are, and they can give you some advice and you know, and so on. So you know, so what's it called? Yeah, so these are all the things that is possible if you take the time to develop relationships with the housing authority. So anyway, I am done for the day, I think. This is, again, my name is Joe Asamoah, Dr. Joe. You can reach me in different ways. You can reach me on my email. my website is joeasamoah.com. That's JoeAsamoah, joeasamoah.com. You can reach me on Instagram and also on Facebook at Dr. Joe Asamoah, Dr. Joe Asamoah, JoeAsamoah. I'm usually on Bigger Pockets live stream every other Friday. So I should have been on tomorrow, but it's today, and I'll be back again in a couple of weeks on Friday. You can reach me at my website as well. We have a Wealth Wednesday every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I do have a live stream where I talk about different subjects. We had one yesterday, so feel free to check in with me. And I'm all about trying to help people. I'm all about the pie is big enough for everybody. It's a great business, which I've just described to you. Hopefully it resonates with you, and hopefully I can help you, as part of your real estate goals and experiences. I'm always, reaching out to people. So check me out on Instagram or on, Facebook. And also you can go to my website and check me out on every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Where we have a live stream, Get Real with Dr. Joe. Okay, so thank you very much. It is now 2:30. I hope everybody has a great July the 4th, and hopefully I'll see you guys shortly. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.